All right. Welcome back to Modern Josephus. And we are going to go ahead and start off with um, the battle or battles or battle, anyway, called the Philippi races. I learned that it was called Philippi because I met someone called, met a someone who worked with the um, reenactments, and they work at Great Clips, and they are part of the reenactments, and they would go to Philippi races. So that's the first time I ever heard that was called Philippi. Normally, I call it Philippi or something like that. No, or it's called Philippi, and I would call it Philippi anyway, something like that. I still don't have it right. I'm sure that the guy telling it here will remind me whether it's Philippi or Philippi. Anyway, it's a small little battle that was fought between McClellan and somebody else whose name is long forgotten um, in the history of the U.S. Civil War. Um, that's about all I know about it. I read a little bit of it in the book Shelby Foote's first volume of the U.S. Civil War, so I have that down pat. Well, not down pat. Hardly even talked about it. Just mentioned the fighting, and I think there were two other battles that came right after it at around the same time. Now, if you remember, the last time I did one of these, which was the first one I did, was it April? I think it was April when we were talking about the firing on Fort Sumter. So just imagine from April and now we're June 3rd. So it's been 3 months roughly since the battle, since the firing on Fort Sumter. So it's been a while. So just think about how it must have been for Abraham Lincoln and the Union as they were gathering the forces and nothing yet had happened. They were getting prepared for war. And the next, well, there were two more battles after this. And I'm not sure if any of them came after the Battle of Bull Run, which won't be till next month, I believe. Anyway, we'll get this going and go with it. Let's hear what the man has to say. I hope it's going. There we go.
Hello, everybody. Man, we are cruising through West Virginia. You're with the American Battlefield Trust. I'm Gary Edelman. That's Chris White behind the camera. We'll bring on a special guest in just a second. And we're really happy to have you with us. Please share this with your friends so as many people can see this as possible. And we have moved further in. We're in Barber County, West Virginia, and we are at Philippi, at the famous covered bridge that we'll talk about at Philippi, with the main part of the town off Oak.
So it is Philippi. There you go. And I always called it Philippi for many, many years.
Over my left shoulder there. Now, what we're talking about here is some really early Civil War stuff, okay? We're talking about not the summer, not the fall, the spring of 1861, okay? This is the site of the first land battle of the Civil War. Take that, Manassas. Take that, Fairfax. Take that, Big Bethel, okay? And we're going to be talking about this, about Philippi and how it's connected to Rich Mountain and how it's connected to Corix Ford. But we're going to start here at Philippi. I first want to bring on our guest here. This is Rick Wolf. He is the president of the Rich Mountain Battlefield Foundation, which has preserved more than 400 acres of land in partnership with what is now the American Battlefield Trust. So, Rick, thanks for joining us.
Well, hey, thank you. I'm happy to be here. And welcome to West Virginia. And this is where the most important battles took place in the summer of 1861.
Good. Lyle, let me go grab the camera from Chris White. He's going to go on and tell you a little bit more about West Virginia.
All right, we're doing our fire drill here. I want to thank everybody for watching so far. You know, we've been down to Romney. We've shot some videos between here and Romney on our way out, so you'll see those coming up here in the next few days. We went to a place called Corix Fort, which will play into our next stop at Rich Mountain. But first and most importantly, we need to kind of set up where we are in May and June of 1861. To give you a quick crash course, come April of 1861, the Confederates will fire on Fort Sumter in Charleston Harbor, and that will start to push the upper South, places like Tennessee, North Carolina, and Virginia, into making a decision. Which side of this war will they come down upon? On April 17th of 1861, Virginia will start pushing for secession. 6 weeks later, there will be a vote that will bring Virginia out of the Union and into the Southern.
So my last time I did this with this same organization, I did an animated battle map of Fort Sumter. Well, they don't have an animated battle map of Philippi, so bear with me as we get through this.
Southern Confederacy. Well, this doesn't sit well with about 29 delegates who were down in Richmond at this time, which is the state capital of Virginia. Keep in mind, Virginia in 1861 is a massive state. It encompasses the current 95 counties of Virginia, as well as the 55 counties of West Virginia. So this is a massive state, the largest state this side of the Mississippi River. So what will happen is men like John Carlisle will start calling upon the men who want to stick with the Union in a place called Clarksburg. You may have heard of Clarksburg because that's where Stonewall Jackson is born, not too far from where we're standing. And Carlisle will start to press to keep about 34 counties of West Virginia, or of Virginia, which will become West Virginia, in the Union. The idea is that these folks really don't feel like they're part of the rest of Virginia. Remember, Virginia was founded on the Atlantic coast, then moved into the direction of where we're standing. So some of the values are different. Some of the economic systems are different. The politics are different. So what we're starting to see out here in Western Virginia are these Western Virginians kind of looking more like they have more in common with Ohioans or Pennsylvanians, not so much their brethren in Eastern Virginia. So what will end up happening is John Carlisle, Francis Pierpont, and others will start to get together, and they will push in Wheeling, West Virginia, the first state capital of West Virginia, for statehood. This is going to be the new government of Virginia, which eventually turns into the Kanawha, which turns into West Virginia. And Kanawha is actually is spelled like it looks, Kanawha, not Kanawha as it looks on the map that you'll see. But these men will start to come together. This will give some weight to people like William Dennison out in Ohio, the governor out there, saying, wait, if this part of Virginia starts to break off, they're pro-union. Virginia's right across the Ohio River, remember, in 1861. If we start to support these folks, we send troops across the Ohio River in Parkersburg into Virginia and start pressing down towards places like Philippi, we can start to create a buffer zone between us and the war front. So men like William Dennison will start to send troops across the Ohio River on May the 27th, and they will start to link up with some Union troops here on this side of the river, led by Benjamin Franklin Kelly and others, and they're going to start pushing towards the key rail center of Grafton, Virginia. Grafton is key because it's on the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, and that is really the lifeblood to get Union forces east and west during the American Civil War. It's also why West Virginia has its eastern panhandle that sticks out like a thumb towards Washington, D.C. So as all of this is starting to take place, we start to see men like William Rosecrans, George McClellan, men that you'll know in the Union Army start to rise to the top and start to come into Western Virginia. Now, granted, McClellan's not here at Philippi. He'll come over a few weeks later. But what's going to happen is these Union forces are going to start pushing towards Philippi. And I'm going to bring Rick on here to start talking about what it would look like in the Grafton, Philippi area in May of 1861. We got a guy named George Porterfield who's in charge of the Confederates. We've got Kelly. We got a guy named Thomas Morris. We got some others. We got a lot of people starting to play a role in why they come down here to Philly. So what do you got to say, Rick?
Okay, what we have on the 25th of May, 1861, we have two trestles that are burned on B&O Railroad. This is done by men that Porterfield, Colonel Porterfield, Confederate States, and command Confederate States armies out here, and he sent out agents to burn those trestles. Those trestles, the burning of those trestles, set into action the invasion of Western Virginia by Ohio and Indiana troops. Ben Kelly, on the 27th of May, 1861, left out of Wheeling with troops and moved on to the trestles, repaired the trestles, moved on to Fairmont, made sure that the steel bridge there across the Monongahela River was intact, and then moved on to Grafton. Grafton was where Porterfield had his men. But on the 30th of May, 1861, Porterfield moved out of there and moved south to Philippi. Kelly moved into Grafton and right away started planning to attack Porterfield at Philippi.
So I'm going to jump on here real fast, Rick. Stay here. You're good. We're trying to COVID be away from each other, but talk to you at the same time. So Porterfield, George Porterfield, he's a Virginian by birth. He's a Virginia Military Institute grad, class of 44, I believe. So he has some military background at least. Mexican War. He fights in the Mexican-American War. So he's the principal commander out here. A lot of people think, when you think of Western Virginia, maybe Stonewall Jackson, Robert E. Lee, maybe William Wing Loring. But Porterfield's out here with a ragtag force, would you call it?
About 750 men, 775 men here, including a group of cavalry from Churchville Cavalry.
And then on the Union side, we have Benjamin Franklin Kelly, who's a New Hampshire-born general, colonel at this time, comes to Wheeling, goes to Philadelphia, but comes back to West Virginia.
He really spent most of his life in Wheeling and went to Philadelphia for 8 or 9 years while his wife was there in a insane asylum. Then Kelly, what his plan was to take a two-pronged attack. Men under Colonel Dunning would, under Colonel Dumont,
You got it.
Colonel Dumont would leave out of Webster Station, which is just east.
After a while, all the names do get confusing.
And or west and south of Grafton. Kelly would take the train 6 miles to Thornton Station, get off there, and then bring his troops in a 22-mile round trip and cut off the Confederates at the south of Philippi. Well, that did not just happen like that. The Dumont's men were going to have a pretty easy route down the Fairmont-Beverly Turnpike, about 12 miles. Even though it rained that night pretty good, they had a nice road to travel over. Kelly's men got off the train at Thornton, and they had a long, hard trip. Rain, 22 miles. These were brand new troops. You had a regiment of 1st Virginia, which Kelly led, and then you had the 9th Indiana, and you had 13th Ohio. So these
Indiana boy right here.
Young, brand new troops did this long march on the 2nd of June, 1861, and they arrived in Philippi on 3 June, 1861. Now, the plan is for Dumont to get in place with 2 artillery pieces, 2 6-pound Mexican war guns, and put it on top of the mountain. Yeah, this was all clear at that time. So he's on the hill overlooking Philippi. Kelly is supposed to come in at the south part of Philippi, but that does not happen. Because of the hard march, the rain, he comes in the middle of Philippi, right over top the bridge. There's a road there that he comes in on. Well, Dumont's on top of the hill already in place, and he has our friend Frederick Lander with him, a volunteer aide. Lander wants to get things moving. Let's fire these cannons. Well, they noticed the Confederates were down in the town moving around. So the Confederates knew what was going on. They had already been warned by some spies from Fairmont, 2 ladies that said that Kelly was moving on Philippi. But Colonel Porterfield did not believe anyone would march through that driving rain that night. So he was waiting till in the morning of the 3rd of June, and he was going to leave. He had his wagons in the street, and he was going to leave to Fort Beverly. Well, as the Confederates started moving around, Lander fired the cannons. And they started pouring down on the Confederate camp there along the Tiger Valley River, which we have in front of us here. And they started scurrying around. Lander jumps on his horse, rides directly down this hill, very steep hill. Some of the soldiers said this is the most amazing ride they'd ever seen. Kelly is about a mile away, and here's the cannons going off. So he gets his men moving very fast. And he's double timing here. They come charging into town. They did not come over the bridge. They didn't have to, but Dumont men will come over the bridge. Kelly hits the Confederates there as they're retreating. The 1st Virginia pushing forward. They're the first ones. The Ohio and Indiana units wanted to put the Virginians first, since it was their land that they were invading. And few casualties, few wounds. Kelly is riding down, and a quartermaster by the name of Sims steps out behind one of the wagons, pulls up a horse pistol, and fires, hitting Kelly in the chest and knocking him from his horse. He's laying there. The soldiers, the 1st Virginia, grabbed Sims, and they were ready to kill him. Lander dashes forward on his horse, says that man is a prisoner of war. He'll not be hurt. And Lander took Sims, hurried him off. Kelly was taken to the Ashenfelder house, where he was looked at by surgeons. At first they said it was mortal, but whenever his surgeon, Joseph Thoburn, found him, he said, no, he'll live. Kelly gives a dramatic deathbed presentation of, I wish I could live for my country, but if I must die, I die for a good cause.
Good. And so Kelly survives this wound, and there's a picture of him in later life showing off the wound itself, where he was shot in the chest. And a horse pistol, if you know anything about them, they're a powerful pistol if you're shot at close range. So, just to talk here for a second, now Talbot's Hill, that's where Aldous and Brodus College sits today. That's where the Cleveland Light Artillery will set up 2 6-pounder howitzers. They're going to be lobbing about a dozen shells down into the town. Now, we'll talk about that unit, which was created in 1839. It's actually a militia unit out of Cleveland, Ohio. And that unit will eventually take away what could be the first captured battlefield cannon of the Civil War at Quark's Ford. It's actually given to that unit, taken back to Cleveland. We'll talk about that in our Quark's Ford video. Down here, we'll have the 7th Indiana. You may have heard of the 7th Indiana. They fought on Culp's Hill at Gettysburg. They're going to be one of the units up there. So you're going to start to see some tie-ins here. Lander, later on, is fighting at Romney. He's the man who is going to evacuate Romney. If you watched our video from earlier today, he is going to be out there. Then a little bit later on, George McClellan will cross the Ohio River at Parkersburg, make his way down here, and just up the road at the Anna Jarvis House, establish his headquarters. She is the lady who founded Mother's Day here in the United States, and that house is open for tours. So you have a lot of moving parts here. And Philippi itself is not strategically important. What was important was Grafton to the north. If you look at a map, you can see that in a straight line north to south, you would have Pittsburgh, Morgantown, Fairmont, Grafton, Philippi. What Porterfield was trying to do, as Rick said, is move down to Beverly, which is about 30 miles to the south of us, and he could try to kind of consolidate his forces there. In Porterfield, his forces are not exactly what I would call A-list units at this point. Some of the men were proud of the tents that they had because they didn't have any weapons, but they're like, look at these really good tents we have. It's raining out here a lot. It's going to rain throughout West Virginia a lot in 1861. It seems to be every one of the battles. So you're going to start to see those types of things. You'll see Kelly out here. But what's really the shining star here in Philippi, which is the first land battle of the Civil War, is the covered bridge. Rick, let's talk about the history of this bridge. It's built in 1852, cost about $12,000, but it's it's survived floods, it survived a war, and it survived a fire.
Yes. This bridge was built by Lemuel Chenoweth.
Okay, I'm going to stop right there. I really don't care about the bridge. I'm sure it's interesting, but it has nothing to do with what we're trying to get at. Apparently, the battle was on the other side of the bridge. So that's interesting. I thought that actually George McClellan was right there on the battlefield, because that's what the Shelby foot map shows. It shows the arrow, and on top is George McClellan. But George McClellan was even there. So I guess he gets the credit for being the officer in charge, even though he wasn't in charge of the battle. So maybe we should, somebody should fix that there and have it as this Colonel Kelly, because he seems to be the man. Shout out to those Indiana boys, Hoosiers. I was born in Indiana. Didn't grow up there, but was born there. Have kind of an attachment to it. So I always like to hear about the Indiana boys in the Civil War. So that's cool. Pretty interesting about the West Virginia and how they separated from the Union. Of course, I always knew that they had separated from Virginia to keep on the Union side, but a little bit of detail there was pretty cool. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'll go ahead and leave it here. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and that will help get more of these videos out. So I'll leave it at that today, and we will see you tomorrow. I don't know when the next Civil War battle will be, but I know it will probably be very soon. So I don't know. It may be some of these, and it may be some of the animated ones, but I'm sure we'll find out more. Thank you. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.